Mr. Phillips, California high-speed rail. What's your position on this project that seems to be kind of moving forward at this point?
Yeah. We have this financial mess that we're in. And now we want to go ahead and spend $68.4 billion on a train that goes from Madera to Bakersfield. I was born in Kern County near Bakersfield, and it's not a travel destination. I visited Madera, and again, it's something that you don't go to. It's not out of your way. If there was a travel route that made sense for high-speed rail, then I would look at it, but I would not look at it at this time. $68.4 billion. It's 130 miles of a hybrid track. Hybrid meaning that they're going to use part of existing rail lines, passenger and freight, and they've said that it cannot go faster than 80 miles an hour due to the crossings over in that 130 miles. It's not a high-speed rail. But it is $500 million per mile. And to put that in perspective, that's having one Solyndra per mile for 130 miles. From here to Sacramento, just imagine the freeway lined up with businesses that size and that scope, sitting empty. Do we really think that the ridership will be that significant between Madera and Bakersfield that will pay for itself? It's going to be a huge subsidy by the taxpayers. It's not going to be self-sufficient. I've ridden high-speed trains in Spain. Beautiful, great luxury, but we don't need it. Right now with $68.4 billion, I think we could do some work on our pensions, maybe put some money aside for medical retirees and pensions, help our school districts, but not to build a high-speed rail. It's just throwing money away. And they'll tell you that, you know, it's not coming out of your tax dollars. I don't care what pocket they're picking. They're still picking my pocket. It's still my money, however they sell it to me. So I'm opposed to it.
Ms. Buchanan.
Two quick corrections. The money for high-speed rail can't be used for schools or other programs. The $68 million or $1 billion is for the entire project. It's not for the short segment. That's about $6.5 billion, most of which is coming from the federal government. Having said that, what the governor did was he took a look at the state of California and where we're going to be 10 or 20 years from now. And when they did their traffic studies and they looked at where we are, when we hit 50 million people, virtually every freeway in the state is going to be like a parking lot. And our airports are going to exceed capacity. So when he took a look at that, the question is where are we going to spend our money? You take a look at a freeway like 680, we've expanded it as far as we can. We can't widen it anymore. And he believes that high-speed rail should be part of our future. If you look at our population growth, you may laugh at Bakersfield. Our population growth is all inland. We're not growing on the coast. That's why, you know, the assembly seats, the Senate seats, the congressional seats, the pickup for all of that was inland. So I do believe that high-speed rail should be part of our future. Where I disagree with the governor is on the current route. I mean, if I were, and I've worked with it, I've talked to his people. I've talked to Dan Richard, the chair of the high-speed rail. I talked with Congressman Miller, and we actually both agree. I think that the route for high-speed rail should follow Highway 5 and be parallel to that all the way down to Los Angeles. Because if we did that, you could hit the 220 mile per hour speeds the entire way. We have connectivity. You're going to have BART going out to Livermore. You've got connectivity in Sacramento. It will force local communities like Fresno to build their own transportation, regional transportation out to connect, but I think it would be a much more beneficial route than the one that's currently planned.
Thank you.
Can I say something on that?
Sure.
Okay. It's a wonderful vision, but it's not the plan that's on the books. It's not where we're going to be spending our money. It's great to have a vision. I also have a vision of taking that money and paying out some of the debt for some of our schools. I also have that money, we can apply that money to some of our folks that are losing their health care. Do we really need this railway, this expense? Joan voted for it. Just to make that clear, she voted to spend our money on this. Thank you.
Yeah,
We can go on to the next question.
all right. Next question. California is famous for its smoke and mirror budgets. What would you suggest be done to actually balance a California budget?
Well, we have a governor who is actually taking the budget very seriously. For those who have been in my pancake breakfast or my town halls, I have a whole PowerPoint presentation on how we got into this mess. And the bottom line is we've used all the gimmicks we can. We've used all the borrowing. It hasn't been healthy. It's resulted in our having a larger structural deficit. When Brown first became governor, the structural deficit was over $26 billion. We've come pretty close to closing that gap. We have accumulated borrowing, though, of about $35 billion, about $20 billion additional borrowing we do in terms of revenue anticipation notes, just to, I don't want to say to smooth out cash flow, to balance the budget. We have $15 billion in deferrals, where you, instead of paying someone June 30th, you pay them July 1st. And we have huge debt that I didn't create and you didn't create, but we've got to pay it off. We can't continue to pass it on to our children. So you know, I believe that ultimately the legislature has to have the courage to make the tough decisions. We started borrowing when Gray Davis was governor in 2003. In 2004, Schwarzenegger asked us to pass a $15 billion revenue bond, which we did, and he said he was going to pay off the debt, balance the budget, and tear up the credit card. We were still selling some of those bonds when I was elected in 2008. I mean, we've borrowed our way and done all we can, and it has to stop, because ultimately what happens when you do that is you have less money to fund the programs you value. It's just not healthy.
We have a governor that is now taking the budget seriously. We didn't get here overnight. It's been a long time coming. And when you hear the stories, and I mentioned this before, on the Parks Department finding $54 million, I don't know if you've all heard that, but we have used accounting gimmicks. We've used budget line budgeting where if someone had a budget of $5 this year and they request a budget of $7, but they only get $6, now they've had a reduction of budget by $1 or by 20%. Now, that's not a reduction in money. That's just a reduction in money that they were hoping that was going to come. We've used these smoke and mirrors forever. And again, Proposition 31, it's for accountability, to try to make the legislators accountable, because they have not been. They've done the lazy thing, they've done the easy thing, and they've kicked the can down the road long enough. You need to have courage to go in there. Say, you know what? This is what we're truly working with. This is our pie. Find out how much money we have. These are our priorities. This is what we set up that we believe as a state are important to us. We fund those first and foremost, which has to be education and healthcare and public safety. That should be our priority. Everything else is peripheral. We need to increase our tax bases in order to do that. So I'm glad that he's now taking it seriously. For the last 40 years, Democrats been in the Senate and the legislature here, in the Assembly, and this is where we've gotten.
All right, one last question before we do our closing statements. On term limits, Senate Republican leader Bob Huff said he used to support term limits, but along the way, before I came up here, I decided we may have made a mistake on that because we do tend to dumb down the institution. Just recently, California amended the term limit statute to allow you to use all of your service in either the Assembly or the Senate. What are your feelings on term limits? And should any further changes be made to the statute or to other areas of the law to help the legislature work better? Yes.
I oppose term limits in any form or fashion. I think that, again, it creates an environment for people to go in just to do their job for 2 to 4 years and then to move on, to use it as a stepping stone. It's also a lazy way for the population to deal with who they're going to vote for. Oh, they've been in 2 terms, they're out, I guess I'll vote for the other person. It doesn't work. If you have someone that's good, that's qualified, that's doing their job, that's representing their people, then they need to stay in office. But when they're bought and paid for by all the special interest unions, then maybe it's time to go. You know, if you have to buy your campaign then you shouldn't be in office.
Mr. Buchanan.
I didn't vote for term limits when it was first on the ballot. I did vote to allow members, this last time, to allow members to serve 12 years all in one house, and I'm hopeful that that will be positive. You know, having served there in the assembly, and I'm now, it's sort of like you take a year or so to get your sea legs right, and then you become effective, and then you're terming out, and I don't think that's healthy for the state of California. It does two things. One is it gives much more power to the staffers in government, and I really do believe that when you're appointed as a committee chair, you need to run that committee, and the best way to do that is to actually have either experience and knowledge or have sat on the committee for a while. You're appointed chair, and you can be there long enough to really make a difference. And so I would love to see them abolished entirely. I'm hopeful that the 12-year change will be meaningful. It'll allow, like I said, people to be committee chairs for 8 or 10 years and really get to know their fields in depth and run the committees and make a difference. In terms of special interest, if you take a look, for example, at where teachers have supported me, but the chamber has supported me, and California Small Business has supported me, and insurance and banking, and a number of industries. And campaigns in California are expensive. I wish they weren't expensive, but I've always believed if someone donates to my campaign, it's got to be because they share my values. And if you do take a look at my voting record, I don't have a 100% voting record with virtually any group except Equality California, because I take my time to, as I said earlier, to read the analysis, read the bills, and vote on what I believe is in the best interest of my constituents.